this dynamic between mother and child is key for both books, and I wondered if you could talk a little about how you built that up in your books, both of you, because it's how both stories move forward is the relationship.
I suppose my character is a little bit of what might be pejoratively termed a mummy's boy, a bit like Emma's, but like Jack. So Charlie and Jack are both have Charlie has a very close relationship with his mother. He's an only child, which is partly why that's happened, and he has a father who wants him to be a different kind of a son. His father has in mind a very particular kind of boy, and Charlie can't make himself fit it. He tries and he can't do it. So he's formed a very close relationship with his mother in certain kind of key ways. One of the things they love to do, which just got mentioned in the second extract, was she's a great reader of detective novels. She gets them out in wadges from the library and reads her way through them, and they're kind of where she goes to escape. And so she often has him read them out, or he likes to read them out, even though he doesn't quite understand all the stuff that's in them. He reads them out to her. And I think she's keen for him to forge his own identity, but and to be separate from her. But I don't think she depends upon him, but they do have a very close relationship. But in a sense, almost the more important relationship of the story is the relationship he then develops with the doctor, with Jean, which is quite separate from his relationship with his mother, and is a real relationship between equals. So she's initially not a parent to him, and that's both exhilarating to him and quite surprising. And she's also, as a middle-class woman, very unlike anybody he's ever met too.
Yeah, that's right. I wanted to show the range in how a family might react when their daughter comes back to them after 7 years of being missing, presumed dead. And I thought, one of those very valid responses is for a father to be glad to have his daughter back, but to be absolutely appalled that there's this child of rape, this strange little pale long-haired boy that he's never met before, which to her father would always be a living reminder of, my daughter was raped over and over again. So I don't think you can shy away from the psychological discomfort here. And that's something else the media try and do, photos of the happy families reunion. I mean, the sentimentalizing of every kind of family relationship, it's just disgusting. And if you're in this little bubble of celebrity, it can make it particularly unreal. So I really enjoyed, in a way, having, the forces of American television act as the equivalent of the gossiping neighbors, the needling, the criticizing. Like in my book gets criticized for still breastfeeding Jack, for instance. That's one of the things that fingers start to wave about,
I love the breastfeeding detail because it felt it felt so normal to me that it seemed to. I can remember having an argument with my mother-in-law about precisely the breastfeeding question. So it seemed a very normalizing, actually, in one way, very normalizing point of dispute between mother and daughter.
Together, whatever passes the time. A friend of mine breastfeeds her daughter at 5 because she said it's great, keeps her out of the way while I'm emailing.
Both seem very kind of natural, and I wondered if you could talk a bit about that, of what you were trying to do with that.
Well, I've written, as I said, a novel about two women who fall in love, and one of the reasons I did that was because it happened to me, and I have children, so I wanted to have one of the women to be a mother, and one of the women to be a mother, but I wanted to set it back in time, at a time when they're not expecting it. It comes it comes completely from the left field for both of them. They're not looking for this. They don't have any sense of themselves as having a sexual identity in that way. They come from different classes, as I've said. And B, when it does happen, what they meet is incredulity, their own incense at first, and then the incredulity of the town in which they live. So that's partly why I set it in the 1950s. And I began with the question: what would the mother fear most if this happened to her, if she had a child? And I thought, well, the thing she would fear most then would be losing her child, for a long time I thought I'd write a court scene. I thought it was all going to end with a big court scene, which it doesn't, at which custody was awarded to her father because she would have been deemed an unfit mother. That doesn't happen, and I did lots of research to check that would have been what had happened, and that is certainly what would have happened if it had come to that.
Both of you, I noticed when I was doing a little bit of research, are described as lesbian writers, and I wondered how you felt about that, label.
We were just joking in the green room that it's a newer label to Fiona, and it's one that this particular book of mine has no lesbian content, so I feel like I'm lifting this very heavy badge off me and handing it to Fiona and saying, you deal with it. No, I don't. I don't renounce the label at all. No, some of my books have lesbians in them and some don't, and I really try not to worry about the labeling factor. I figure it would be bad manners to reject the label. You know, if I went around saying, don't call me an Irish writer, it would seem as if I was ashamed of being Irish. So I feel the same thing about lesbian writer or, you know, unusually tall writer.
There's no Irish, no lesbians.
There's none of that.
No
It just so happens.
No Canadians.
No Canadians, no.
I did get the lesbian question for the first time at a reading event I did about Tell It to the Bees in Blackpool, and somebody said to me, so has your next book got a lesbian in it? And I thought, oh, and I said, actually no. And she said, the question along the lines of, don't you think there ought to be a lesbian in it? And I said, well, no, the story doesn't work like that. I said, there is a gay man, does that count? But you know.
Was she happy with that?
No, she wasn't happy with that. But
I had that last scene in mind from before I even wrote it. It was very clear to me that I just needed to get Ma and Jack to a point where they could get on with their lives, and I was not going to say how their lives develop, because the funny thing is they will end up rather ordinary, you know. They'll become more like an ordinary young mother and an ordinary boy. They'll have other things in their lives. They'll be, you know, spread over many roles, whereas in Room they have this weirdly concentrated existence. So all I can wish for them and hope for them is the blessing of ordinariness, really.
My book actually, the ending has been quite controversial in amongst my readership. It seems that my book ends. Again, I don't want to give away the ending, but there's a frame around my book around the main story, which is set about 20 years after the main story. So the book has a very short piece at the beginning, which is 20 years later, and it involves Charlie and his father, and it concludes at the end. And some people have really liked that, some people have really not liked it, some people have wanted much more, and they wanted me to write another kind of novel on the back of that novel. So I find endings, I have an ending for my next novel, the one I'm writing, but I wasn't sure how to end this one, and wrote a kind of, I don't know, a kind of an ending full of suggestion, I think, but so then for some people that's worked, and for some people they felt irritated by it.
I often have readers coming up to me and saying, why didn't you tell us more at the end of that novel? You know, and they say this of several of my novels, but I don't think it's good for them. I'm sorry, I know it's a bit frustrating, but it's up to readers to make that imaginative leap themselves, you know.